Welcome back to Sailing El Holeo. This was a really exciting week. We had a lot of good stuff and bad stuff happen. When we left off last week, let's see, we were in the Wacca River and we had just pulled off into Thoroughfare Creek here. And we were getting zoomed by speedboats, so we decided to move up the Wacca to Prince Creek, which is one of our favorite anchorages. It actually is our favorite anchorage on the entire East Coast. It's so beautiful there. We stayed there for about 10 days. And then we moved up to the Enterprise Oxbow anchorage where we made some major changes to the way that we're cruising going forward. And I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. I do have to apologize. You're definitely going to hear some scratching in this video. The dogs just got fresh rolls this morning, so they're all going to town on them. So there will be some crunching going on in the background. But as we head up the Wacca, it's always good to have a contingency plan. You know, there is a lot of debris in the water, and I am always on red alert. If I hit anything, I instantly shift into neutral. And I just have that mindset. I actually say it to myself when we enter the Wacca because there is so much debris in the water there. And it's good to have a contingency plan. Just as a general rule, when I'm traveling, every hour I try and come up with a new contingency plan. What to do if the engine fails, you know, if something happens, if we start taking on water, you know, what to do in just a wide variety of things that could possibly go wrong. And I try and run that exercise once an hour. Sometimes I get a little complacent. But, you know, I do always try and take note of which way the wind's coming from if the engine fails. You know, which way am I going to get the head sail up, and can I anchor anywhere nearby? So one of the contingencies that I always think about when I'm going up the Wacca is if I hit something, immediately shift to neutral. And it's a good mindset to have because today we did hit a log. And, excuse me, the log was about 20 feet long and it was submerged. So it was just below the water line. But as soon as we hit it, I hopped down, shifted into neutral, and the propeller had stopped spinning by the time the log got halfway back through the boat. Now, EJ does have a full keel and she does have a skeg hung rudder. So the prop is about as protected as it could possibly be, but I would never want a spinning prop to hit a log. It would just be bad news. And about 3 hours later, another boat came through and hit the same log, and he did bend his prop. So it's always good to have just a cycle in your mind, think about all the things that can go wrong and what are you going to do if it happens. And as you get to know areas, you'll definitely know if there are region-specific things to be alerted for. And in the Wacca, tons of debris in the water. You'll see debris everywhere. It's just all the trees they go right up to the shoreline. And the Wacca is so long. It's a huge tributary river. I believe it's like 200 miles long, and the Intracoastal Waterway just goes through one tiny part of it. So there is a lot of debris that comes down, and yeah, just be on alert. And you can't always see the stuff. Like this log was about 6 inches below the water line, completely submerged. I didn't see it until we hit it, and obviously other people hit it too. So it's not, you know, you can't always see everything. As we headed north, we stopped at our favorite marina, which is the Wacca Wache Marina, and we took on fuel and water. It had been quite a while since we had refilled. Our last stop was in Jekyll Island in Georgia, so it had been quite a stretch since we had refilled, and we had a lot of laundry to do. So this timing worked out perfect. So we came through on a Saturday, and I placed my biannual beer order. So every spring and fall when I pass the Wacca Wache Marina, I always order a bunch of beer from them. It sure beats carrying it home from the grocery store, let me tell you. And they have reasonable prices. They get it, bring it to the dock, everything. It's just, well, the couple bucks extra you pay per case is well worth the toil on your back for not carrying it. And this timing worked out great. So we came through on a Saturday. The beer wouldn't be there till the following Thursday, so I refilled on water. We went up to Prince Creek and spent a week there. That gave us an entire week to do all of our laundry. So I got all of the cruise blankets done. I got all of my bedding done, all of my clothes. Everything was clean. And then we went back down to the Wacca Wache Marina and picked up the beer. And I had also, that extra week gave me enough time to order in some treats for the crew. So we were getting low on treats, and I feared a mutiny, to be quite honest with you. So so I ordered in a bunch of treats. We went back down the next Friday and picked everything up, and we were fully fueled, fully watered. We had all of our laundry clean. We had a full supply of beer and treats, and I mean, can life get any better than that? During our stay in Prince Creek, we saw Eddie the alligator almost every day. Now, we had only seen one alligator before in Prince Creek, and it was a relatively small one. And I wasn't sure exactly how common alligators were in South Carolina, but I found out they're actually extremely common. There are hundreds of thousands of them, which made me feel even more stupid for allowing the dogs to play near the water when we were in Thoroughfare Creek, so that'll never happen again. We'll definitely be using leashes in South Carolina. But it was neat to see Eddie the alligator over there. He was about 100 yards from the boat, and every time the tide dropped, we could see him laying over there sunning. So it was pretty neat to see, although, I don't know. It's kind of weird knowing that there are large predators around your boat, and if, something were to happen, you get hit by a log and sink, or, whatever else, a through hull blows out and you sink, you get hit by lightning and the bottom of the boat gets blown out and you sink. I mean, you could be in the water with with some serious predators. And I've seen people skiing and tubing. I've seen kids on inner tubes in the Wacca Wache. I guess I just don't really understand that. I don't know that it's worth the risk, but I don't know. Maybe people that deal with alligators all the time are less freaked out by them, but I was kind of freaked out a little bit. It was right around the Prince Creek area that I decided to make a major change to EJ and how we had been operating for the last 4 years. And this was interesting, where another little bit of providence fell into place, and I actually am now fully convinced that we live in a simulation. I'll get into that later. But the major change that we decided to do, this happened while we were in Thoroughfare Creek. I pulled the trigger. The original dinghy that I bought for EJ was a Hypalon dinghy, inflatable, 12 feet. I think it's 12 feet 6 inches. It has a segmented aluminum floor, Hypalon, inflatable, and it weighs 150 pounds. Now, I originally bought that for a couple of reasons: because it was cheap, because it was Hypalon. It was $3,000. I think I got it for $2,200. I think they had it on closeout. That's why I bought that model. Most of them are around $5,000 for a Hypalon dinghy. And originally we were going to have 3 humans and 2 dogs with, so we needed to carry a lot of cargo. And that dynamic has now changed. It's just me and 3 pups. So we can get away with a smaller dinghy. Now, the problem with the dinghy that I have is that it has a segmented aluminum floor, and I would never buy one of these things again. They are the work of Satan. There's nothing good about them. You can't assemble them in the boat. They're a pain in the ass to put together, and water gets trapped underneath the floor. So underneath the floor is a Hypalon air floor, so you pump up the floor like you do the sides, but there's a gap between the aluminum panels and then the Hypalon floor. So about a gallon of water is perpetually stuck underneath the floor, and you can never get it out. So that's added weight. And also it required a 15-horse motor, so that was another 112 pounds for our Honda Outboard. So between the two, 150 plus 112 is what, around 265 pounds. So that was a lot of weight that we were dragging, plus the weight of the fuel tank and the water that was perpetually stuck in the floor. And also every time that it rained, you had to get into it and bail it out. It was just a pain in the butt, and it was like dragging an anchor. Now, I originally started looking for lighter weight dinghies, and I came across a type that is a catamaran style dinghy. So the floor is actually out of the water, it's open on the front, and it curves from the front down to the transom in the back, and the transom is open. So you can attach your outboard onto the transom, but anytime it rains, any water that lands on the floor of your dinghy will run off the back. There's nowhere for water to get trapped underneath, and you have a lot less drag because the floor is actually out of the water. Now, will it be as comfortable to ride in? Probably not. Absolutely not. There's no way it can be, because you have less room for sitting. But it only weighs 50 pounds, the dinghy, versus 150 for our original dinghy, Frank 1. Now Frank 2, which I've purchased, is going to be only 50 pounds. And because it has a lot less drag, when we're dragging it behind the boat, we're going to get more speed. and the outboard is lighter too. The problem with Beans was Beans weighed 112 pounds. I could barely lift that to get it onto the transom. I am a weak person. I'm not a strong person. So once I got Beans onto Frank, I never wanted to take Beans off because it was just a pain in the butt. I had to winch Beans back onto the deck, and every time I lifted Beans onto Frank's transom, I damn near threw out my back. Now, I've herniated the same disc in my back twice, and they told me if I ever did it again, I'd have to get 2 of my vertebrae fused, so I really don't want to blow my back out again. And, you know, one of the problems with that is, of course, that I'm overweight. So, like, I'm not... Part of this is my fault. But anyway, so the new outboard only has to be a 6-horse to get this dinghy up on plane. So the new outboard only weighs 52 pounds, so versus 112, so it's about half the weight. Now, I routinely put the generator in and out of the dinghy when I'm running it, and the generator, when it's full of fuel, weighs right around 50 pounds. So I can actually lift that by myself quite easily without even using the winch from the dinghy back up onto the deck. So it'll make everything a lot easier, a lot more versatile. We'll have a lot less drag. Now, once we got to the Oxbow Express, so one of the problems that we had, and this was just, like I said, this is just providence. I had ordered the new dinghy and I had ordered the new outboard, and when we were in Prince Creek, the puppy dogs and I got into Frank and Beans, and we were going to go for a ride around the island there. I forget the name of it, and just take a joyride, you know, which we like to do. And Beans actually crapped out. So Beans started running really, really rough. At first, I thought I maybe hit a tree stump or something, but I pulled Beans up out of the water. Prop was fine, no damage, and it was just running really rough. So the first thought I had was it had rained the night before, and I accidentally left the vent open on the fuel tank. So I thought maybe I got some water in the fuel. So I swapped out the fuel, got fresh fuel. It was still running really rough and really is unusable. It almost vibrates itself off the transom, and so I think it might be a spark plug. That's about the only... It's not a mechanical thing. I can tell by the way the prop spins that it's not a mechanical. It's definitely a fuel-related thing. So I think one of the cylinders, it's a 4-stroke. It does have 2 cylinders. So I think one of the cylinders is not firing. So I believe it's a spark plug issue. Now, I had never ever run EJ without having Frank in the water at a minimum. So I wanted to do a test. So once we got to Oxbow Express, I pulled Frank and Beans out of the water, got them both on deck. I couldn't use them because Beans is not running right, so I don't want to take a chance of going somewhere. And, well, I don't want to damage Beans because I hope to sell Frank and Beans this summer and recoup some of the money that I spent on the new dinghy and outboard. So I hope when I get back I can repair Beans. It shouldn't be anything major, and then get some money back for Frank and Beans. So Frank was originally around $2,200, although they sell for a normal Hypalon dinghy is around $5,000. It is used 4 years now, so it doesn't have maybe a whole lot of value. The outboard, I believe, was around $3,200. It is a 15-horse Honda, so I'm hoping I can sell that and recoup some cost on that. The new dinghy was right around $2,000. I think it was just over. I think it was $2,050, and the new outboard was around $1,500. So I'm hoping I can get at least half of the cost of the new dinghy and outboard if I can sell Frank and Beans. And you know, we have now Frank 2 and Beans 2. So that's great. And I thought, since I couldn't use it, I might as well pull it all out of the water and put it up on the deck and see what kind of speed we can achieve when there's nothing dragging behind the boat. And now the new dinghy, if I don't have the outboard on it, it will be essentially like pulling nothing. There's no floor for drag. There's just 2 pontoons. It only weighs 50 pounds, so it's essentially going to be like no weight. Now, it's hard to get a real feel for what kind of speed you gain. I estimated in my mind. I didn't have any reason for this estimate. I just estimated that I should increase in speed like 1.2 to 1.4 knots, and it looks like it's actually closer to about 1 knot. So that's still very significant. I'm increasing my cruising speed by 25-ish%. So that's significant. And saves a lot of headaches of going so slow. So Franken Beans is now on the deck. Unfortunately, that means for the puppy dogs that we just can't go to shore, which it really sucks for them. I feel bad for that. And there are days when we can't get to shore, so they're used to, using the deck. They should be getting more exercise than they're getting. We try and play on the deck, but I know it's not sufficient, and I feel bad for that. So we're trying to get back to Delaware as soon as possible, because I've got a lot of repairs. A lot more stuff has broken on EJ. The list that I have to fix this summer just keeps going up and up and up. So I want to get there as soon as possible to have the most time to fix everything, try and get Franken Beans sold, and just, get the dogs on lands where we can start exercising them and stuff. So that's that. And, the reason why I think we live in a simulation is it seems like every time something happens, it ends up, that seems like a negative. Well, not necessarily a negative. Everything seems to work out okay. Now, I used to live my life very differently than I do now. I used to be not such a nice person, and I've really, really tried to change the way that I interact with other people. Like I said, I'm kind of antisocial. I've never really been a people person, and I've had a lot of, I've changed as a person significantly from the way I used to be, and I'll just leave it at that. And when I started this journey on EJ about almost 5 years ago now, I started out with not a lot of money. So I bought EJ for $27,000, and I had about $150,000 in cash. So I spent not an insignificant portion of that doing upgrades, buying the battery bank, all of the electronics, the inverters, the solar charge controllers, the DC to DC converters, everything that I needed, the induction cooktops, the hot water heater, the convection oven, just the fridges and freezers, just everything that I needed to make EJ suitable for living on full-time off-grid. So I spent a significant portion, probably 65-ish thousand on that. And at the time I had all of the money in stable coins, so in cryptocurrency with BlockFi. Now, most of you, if you've been a long-time listener, you know what happened there. The whole BlockFi debacle, when that collapsed. Now, the way this originally worked was, so I had it all in stablecoin. I didn't have it in anything risky, but I was supposed to earn, I think it was around 7% interest that was paid out monthly on the money that I had in there. So I had around $100,000 left. I had come across a little extra money by selling some memorabilia that I had. So I had about $100,000 in BlockFi when it collapsed. Now, they were doing things with our stablecoin that they weren't supposed to be doing, and that overextended them, and they collapsed. So I lost about $75,000. I did get about 25 out before it collapsed. So I was actually in Chesapeake Bay when it collapsed, and I was going down. This was after the first winter that I spent in Belhaven, and I was just really dejected. I had just lost almost all of my money, and I didn't know that night that it was all getting bad. I didn't know if I put in a withdrawal for $25,000. I didn't know if it was going to go through or not. And then, after the next morning, I put in withdrawals to get the rest of it out. And the one withdrawal that I put in that day went through. So I got 25 grand, and the rest of it was lost. So I said to myself, when I didn't know whether I was going to get this money or not, I was down to about 3 grand in my my checking account. And I said, if I get to 25 grand, I'm going to go ahead and go to Florida this year. Then I'll come back and we'll figure everything out. I'll try and, I might have to go back to work. I might have to do whatever just to make this work. So I got the 25 grand. So I continued on down the road, made it to Florida. That was the first year that we made it to Florida. And I came back that next summer. Now, I still had some money left out of that $25,000, so I went back down to Florida the following year. It's relatively inexpensive to live on a boat, so a little bit of money can go a long way if you're frugal with it. And so I made it back down to Florida the next year, and I was starting to run out of money. So right about that time, I got another disbursement. So everything had gone into litigation, and they were paying out settlements essentially. So out of my 75 grand, I got 7 grand back. That was going to be my settlement. That's what I was going to get back, and then you're screwed for the rest of it. So now I'm down 67,000, but at least I got 7 grand more back. And that was at a time when I was just about out of money. So I was just running on fumes. So I came back the next summer, and that got me back to Delaware. I did some work for my brother, and I did some other chores to earn some money, and that got me back down to Florida again and back. So that lasted me another year. Now this last year I was just about out of money again, and you know, the price of Bitcoin changed drastically, and the reserves that BlockFi had of Bitcoin allowed them to repay the rest of their everything else that was owed. So I got the other 67,000 back. So I was made whole. Now it worked out in a way where I actually ended up with more cash than I would have had otherwise, because I had to be more miserly and more stingy, and I had to, you know, do extra jobs to make money and to make things work. And it all worked out for the best. Now, you know, I've had other failures. Like this year I bought the generator, and then a week later my alternator failed. Now, if I hadn't ordered that generator, not knowing that my alternator was going to fail, I would have been screwed. So that was just another piece of providence. And now I ordered a new outboard and dinghy, and then 3 days later my outboard craps out. So it's just the way everything works out, and the way my crew has come to me and everything. It's just, I don't know. It all just seems such a coincidence that it just almost can't be coincidence, that stuff just seems to work out for the best. You know, in the moment, some things seem to be really tragic, but in the long term, everything does seem to work out. And I actually do honestly believe that we live in a simulation, not just because of this, just because of the way my life has worked out. And you know, the real question is, am I the only real person? Is this a simulation just for me and everyone else is an NPC? I don't believe that. I think we're all plugged into the simulation together. And even if everyone else was an NPC, it wouldn't change the way that I try and interact with people. So I don't know. You know, the chance that we're in base reality is actually very, very small. But it really doesn't matter whether we're in base reality or not, because there are still consequences, even if this is a simulation. So a lot of junk there at the end, but if you have read anything or heard anything about simulation theory, it's just a very interesting topic. And the way that I look at my life, I've had a really fucked up life, seriously fucked up, but you know, everything has always seemed to work out for the best. And the more that I lean into letting go and giving up control, like I'm not doing reckless stuff. I'm not going to go out and spend all my money tomorrow saying, oh, the simulation will provide for me. No, that's not what I'm saying. And you know, there are still consequences to committing crimes and stuff, even if this is a simulation. So it doesn't really change anything, but I don't know. It kind of gives me a little faith that things will work out. So anyway, for what it's worth, that's the new news. So I've got a crap ton of work to do. We've got a new outboard and dinghy coming in. I'm really excited to try that. I know it's not going to be as nice as Frank and Beans, but I think the efficiency in motoring that we will get by having Frank 2 and Beans 2 being so much lighter is going to be worth it. So anyway, that's it for this week. I hope everyone's doing well, and I guess we'll see you next week. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I wouldn't make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, Matthew Spotton, Peter Allen, and Natalie Linehan. Thank you guys so very much. Your support really means the world to me. I do have one legacy patron member, and her name is Joan Linbo. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. We really miss you, Joan. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to our Patreon page where you can sign up. And there are hundreds, literally hundreds of extra videos and photos of our travels, and I try and keep everything there up to date and post at least once or twice a week, so it gives you a little peek behind the curtain. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That'll help us out more than you'll ever know, and that actually doesn't cost you anything, so hit that like button. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.